Shalom. I hope everyone's had a blessed week. This week our Torah portion is Ki Tetse, and we're in Deuteronomy 21:10 through 25:19. It's going to be a shorter discussion today, just have two major things that I want to point out. The first one is found really close to the beginning of this week's portion, in chapter 21, verse 15 through 17, and I'll just read it. It says, if a man has two wives, one loved and the other unloved, and both the loved and the unloved have borne him sons, but the firstborn is the son of the unloved one, when he wills his property to his sons, he may not treat as firstborn the son of the loved one, in disregard of the son of the unloved one who is older. Instead, he must accept the firstborn, the son of the unloved one, and allot to him a double portion of all he possesses, since he is the first fruit of his vigor. The birthright is his due. And I find this really interesting because this describes exactly the situation that Jacob was in with Leah and Rachel. Rachel is the one that he loved, but through deception, he ended up marrying Leah first. And so Reuben, the firstborn of Leah, should be the one who receives the birthright and the double blessing. But we find that's not the case. It's actually Joseph who receives the double blessing, and it's the tribe of Judah who ends up becoming greater than the rest of his brothers. And so and of course, the spiritual significance of that, I don't want to belabor it. Judah and Ephraim through Joseph. Essentially, the entire story of Yahweh's people comes through those two. The Messiah comes through the tribe of Judah, and the Gentiles are able to come in through the pattern laid down by Manasseh, and at the end of days, the two will be joined as one again. But how could this be if that would have essentially broken Torah? Well, if you remember, Reuben lost his birthright and he lost the double blessing because he defiled his father's bed. So he slept with one of Jacob's concubines, and that's how he lost the blessing. Essentially ended up with a curse. And so I found that really, really interesting, what's happening here and how essentially prophecy and the mechanism for Judah and Ephraim coming together again was only made possible because Reuben committed sexual immorality. Otherwise, the whole story for Judah and Ephraim would have broken this Torah principle. And we know that Yahweh cannot break his own rules. So I found that quite interesting. Now, the other part that I want to point out is in chapter 24, and it's verse 16. And it says here, parents shall not be put to death for children, nor children put to death for parents. A person shall be put to death only for his own crimes. And the reason why I find this interesting is because, of course, Yeshua has been put to death for our crimes. For our sin, we deserve to die. The debt that is owed to sin is death. But through Yeshua, we have been freed from that debt. He paid the debt for us. And it says here that parents and children shouldn't be put to death for one another because a person should die for their own crimes. But Yahweh essentially died for us through his Messiah. And so I found that quite interesting and quite significant as well. Now, verse 22, I'm going to point something out as well. This is something that comes up a couple times. Remember, well, I'll just read it. Always remember that you are a slave in the land of Egypt. Therefore, do I enjoin you to observe this commandment. This is called back a lot. Do this because you were once slaves in Egypt. Don't do that because you were once slaves in Egypt. Remember you were slaves in Egypt. And if you look at this the wrong way, you could think that what Yahweh is telling us to do is to live in the past and don't move forward. But that's not at all what he's saying. We are to move forward. We are not to live in the past. We are to live under the new power that we have through his redemption and through the gift of his Spirit that we receive through Messiah. But if we forget the past, then we have the chance to fall into sin again. It's just like when the Israelites entered the promised land, Yahweh said, be careful not to forget everything that I've done for you. And when things are going well for you, you say, hey man, look at all this that I've achieved for myself, when it's really him that's achieved it for us. And that's why it's so important for us to remember where we come from, not so that we continue to live in the past, but so that we can live in the future. That we continually recognize how great God is, recognize that he will always fight for us and always win, and that we wouldn't be where we are without him. This should motivate us to follow his Torah, to do as he says, because we can see that he does know what's best for us, and it really is in our best interest to obey what he says if we want to live a long and blessed life. So, like I said, pretty short today. That's all I had, but I do hope it was a blessing for you. And if there's anything else that you have found interesting from this portion, either related to or not, to the topics that I commented on, I'd love to hear it. Have a blessed week, stay safe, and Shabbat Shalom.